Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're going to talk about running an RPG
with no prep,
on the fly.
Or something similar. So this came about when I was looking on Reddit and somebody asked a question about what game would they run under these parameters. They have no time to put it together, and they were running for a group of friends who have never played.
Okay. I have lots of questions on that. Like, why did they ask him with no time to put it together, and how were they his friends?
Okay, we don't really answer those questions, but I think a lot of people answered
with a specific game.
With specific games, a lot of people suggested Honey Heist. Remember that?
Yes, the one with the bears.
Right, and it's a one-page thing. And other people suggested Blades in the Dark.
Don't you have to roll up characters and stuff for that?
Yeah, and in that game you play a bunch of scoundrels,
right?
Parts of a gang in this medieval setting, and I'm not sure that would be a very good choice. But another stipulation is that he only had 2 hours to play.
So a very short game.
Very short game.
With people who don't know what they're doing and have never played a game before.
Yeah, so I think the reason he said is because they all had kids, and that was about the only time in between putting the kids to bed, and then having to finish off the night of entertainment. So under those parameters, that's pretty difficult, I think. There's a lot of things to unpack, and then although a lot of people suggested, and a lot of suggestions I thought were very good. Mouse Ritter, which is a very simple game where you play mice. And the thing is, your character sheet has like these little spaces where you put chits and things for like items. And as soon as you fill up those boxes, you can't carry anymore. So in that sense, it's super, you can visualize what things you need or can hold and all that other stuff.
I think if you're going to run a game like that, I would suggest you do a game like that's really simple. Like somebody stole the bell from the village green.
Oh, yeah.
Something easy.
Well, yeah. But these people were suggesting actual games.
I know. I'm just saying the scenario would have to be very simple, right?
Right. I totally agree there. Also, people suggested Lasers and Feelings, similar games like that. I kind of took a different tack, though. I was looking at it like, well, the game really doesn't matter. Sort of. But what you do need to know is, as a GM, when you run a game like this, especially under such tight time controls, right? And then you have the people who have never played a game before. So as a GM, you definitely want to run a game that you know the rules of, that you are very familiar with the rules. You don't have to keep looking in the book for rules. I mean, that just kills time.
And that you don't have.
And time is not something that this GM doesn't have. And I think if you run, let's say, Dungeons and Dragons a lot, or maybe you only run Dungeons and Dragons, you can run a 5th edition adventure in 2 hours.
And I think that if the people haven't played, you're going to give them characters anyway. If you only have 2 hours, you're not going to make them roll up characters.
Probably not, unless it's a system that you feel comfortable with, and it's easy to make characters with.
Well, even like with Tales from the Loop, that would be like a half hour of the time.
Well, it depends.
Then you'd only have an hour and a half.
If you really press the players, you can get them to make a character in like 10 to 15 minutes. Just don't let them dawdle.
Yeah, but they've never even played before, so I would suggest just having characters made.
So
but he doesn't have any prep time.
So the rules are, but you should know the rules of the game. Another thing is, you should have run the system a few times, because that way you're more fluid with the rules. You don't need to look in the rule book, and I think that's a major plus if you don't have to do that.
The upside of having a short amount of time and players who have never played before is that the rules are whatever you say they are, right?
Right.
And you don't want to look anything up.
And the information dump can't be one.
No.
Shouldn't be one. You roll this if you want to do this, or something similar. Now, I'm not suggesting you run 5th edition. I would suggest something totally different. But if that's the game you know, I wouldn't suggest you run
Shadowrun,
or something you've never run before. So along with the rules that you know and running the system, it'll also help you if you already have an adventure in mind. One that you've either run before one that you run before and probably hopefully run more than once. That would definitely help the situation where you're really short on time and you don't have time to spend a lot on this or that. Now, personally, I would run Tales from the Loop. Right, that's super easy for me. I've run a couple of adventures quite a few times, and they're really simple. There's not too much. There's not much to the game as far as complexity. It's a simple dice pool system. You add your attribute, you add your skill, add those two numbers,
I tried to roll a 6.
and all you need is 1 6 to succeed.
It's not always easy, people.
It's not always easy, but it's something that's easily understood.
Yeah.
And then the skills are like tech.
Yeah.
They're very broad, so people can understand that. As long as the rules aren't largely, what do you call it, really get into the nitty gritty, like search skill, evade skill, move silently skill, and all these other skills that as a player, you're like, which one fits?
Right.
So you don't want that to happen.
Definitely not. So don't run Pathfinder because they have a lot of those.
Right. And the reason I say you want to be familiar with the rules and the adventures because it's just going to be a better overall experience for you as a GM who are under a lot of stress at this point, and for the players who are going to see a relaxed person running the game, not hemming and hawing, but like
I need to look that up. Give me 5 minutes to look that up.
Eliminating the the ahs, I got to go to the bathroom kind of thing. No, you've run the game, you've run the adventure, and I think the players will definitely pick up on a GM that's relaxed instead of one that's kind of haphazardly doesn't know what they're doing or not sure about how the adventure is supposed to go.
Now, in this scenario that you've described, does this person run games on usually?
Well, I don't. That information
was not available.
Yeah, right, the person that gives divulge their MO or their experience.
Well, I can think of a couple GMs that I know that would probably be able to do this.
I think if you are running or are used to running a totally seat of your pants, spontaneous type of game, then you could run anything, right? But a lot of people, and even me, when I see something like that, I don't feel it's not comfortable. I just think like the person's just making things up as he goes along, and sure, we all do that and are playing make believe. But if there isn't something concrete, then like to do or to figure out, it doesn't seem very satisfying to me. Like if somebody's just riffing, they have a notebook, but there's absolutely nothing written down, right? And they're just like playing with their pencil going, oh yeah, and then this happens. And then this happens. And it kind of reminds me of...
I don't know what game it was that you ran at, I think it was a Pacificon. It was right after the pandemic, I think. And I remember that one of the ladies at your table asked you, was this part of the adventure because you had just drawn it out on a piece of paper?
Oh, yes.
Versus it's part of the other parts of the adventure you printed out the maps or whatever. And I thought that was a very interesting idea that she had that.
Yes.
You decided to go off on your own little thing right there in the middle of the adventure because you wanted to do that.
Because I didn't have maps.
And in reality, you didn't print out a map for that because it had too much information on it or something.
Well, they didn't have a map.
So you were just trying to...
Because I was running a published adventure from the book. And what happened was I know I've told the story before, but it's been maybe...
At least a year.
Quite a few episodes. And I was running a version of... Oh my God, I forgot the name of it. But it was a OSR clone type of game where they mismatched. They mishmashed 5th edition and basic D&D, and they made it simplified and stuff like that. So it was very easy, but it was a futuristic one, kind of like cyberpunk. And the problem is not the problem, but the situation was some things they gave you maps for that they felt was definitely something that was going to happen.
They thought that you were going to have that.
And then you were going to definitely need a map because it was probably becoming a combat encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And the other ones were just situations where, well, if they follow the line, they could go to this person's apartment. Now, nobody's going to be in that apartment, so the chances of there being some sort of combat was very low, extremely low, unless they break in and then make a big ruckus, and then the cops show up and they would decide to fight the cops, which would probably be a bad idea. But, stranger things have happened. And the player herself realized sometimes I had a pre-made map, and sometimes I would draw it out on a battle mat. And she thought that when I was drawing stuff on a battle mat that I was just making things up. I go, no, everything was part of the adventure, literally written, but they didn't have a map for it. And that's what I told her. And she goes, right. Oh, okay. I go, was there some discontinuity between that? And she goes, no, I just noticed that sometimes you had a map and sometimes you didn't. I go, okay. I thought it was interesting.
See, what I was getting at was that the players that haven't played before
right.
are not going to know, like if you draw everything out on if you have a battle mat.
Yes.
Then they're going to be like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." And if you bring out figures, it's even cooler, right?
Yes.
To give them
slow down the game.
Yeah, but you could just have them there as a way to show them, like
where things are.
Yeah.
Yes, especially if they're brand new.
If they're brand new, right?
It's very difficult sometimes. It's like a muscle, your imagination.
Yeah.
Sometimes if people don't read, well, big one is if they don't read, right? If they don't read a lot, then you don't imagine a lot. And I think when people watch movies a lot, their imagination kind of goes down because everything's kind of, I hate to use the term spoon-fed you, but everything is given to you. The vision, the dialogue, the acting and all that. But if you're reading books, you yourself, and we've discussed this many times, when we read a book, we have an idea of what the voice is or what the person looks like in our own heads, or even how to say the name.
Well,
remember when we actually went to go watch Robert Jordan talk?
Yeah.
And he spoke about, he read a chapter out of his book, and then he started saying the names, and we're like, oh, wow, that's how you pronounce it.
That's not how I pronounced it in my head.
Yes, exactly.
Well, even, I don't know if I agree with you completely that I don't think just watching movies is spoon-feeding ideas to people. But, because, people it's a different generation than us. So reading has different, they might read on a tablet or a Kindle.
Yeah. It doesn't matter where you
it's not necessarily and it might be the downfall of the world. I don't know.
I think
but I wouldn't go as far as to say as if you don't read a lot, you don't have a good imagination.
No, but I think you, like I said, if imagination is like a muscle, and the more you use it, the more you can imagine and the more creative you can be in your own mind. Where if you don't read and you don't have to flex that thing, that imagination muscle, then it's hard to put things. And I think I have a pretty good imagination, but I still have problems when people describe a room and you're like, okay, there's a piano here, there's this there, or whatever the situation.
That's why the battle mat comes in handy.
That's why I like.
And I just call it a battle mat because that's its purpose, but that you can use it for whatever you want. A whiteboard would be the same thing, right?
Whiteboards would work fantastic.
Yeah.
Especially the magnetized ones, you could put tokens on them.
I was just thinking if it's Tales from the Loop would be a good quick adventure because it would be something, you could make it something simple.
Yes.
And then putting the attributes together and having a dice pool system is really cool. The other thing I was thinking, though, was that Feng Shui's shot clock would just totally fascinate new players, right? Because it always fascinates me and I'm not a new player. The idea that, everybody rolls their initiative because that's what something you go, okay, you're going to roll and whoever gets this is going to go first.
And then, yeah.
And the idea of the shot clock is just really cool because then they have a visual of when they go, right?
Right.
I just thought that was
I always loved the shot clock. It was pretty cool.
So there's depending on the games you're playing, and even in Tales from the Loop, you don't really roll initiative. Everyone just chooses, right?
Yes.
So there's different kinds of games. You either roll initiative or the party gets to choose who goes first.
So the other half of this situation is the players, right? So in this case, these players never played an RPG. But they might have an idea what RPGs are like because they've seen Stranger Things, or they watched Big Bang Theory, or they read an article about something on the
Or
paper,
they've seen an actual play.
or they've seen an actual play, or all these things.
Or their dad played or something like that.
Right.
He used to. He hadn't done it with them, obviously.
Yeah. Terrible father. But anyway, terrible parent. Anyway, I think in that situation, there's all these assumptions that they might have. And as a GM, you have to make them understand that maybe they might have some misconceptions, right? So if you're playing a D&D game or a medieval fantasy world, there's some rules to that world, right? Nobody's going to pull out a plasma rifle and start shooting people.
And if they do, it might be a problem.
1,000 rounds per minute, right? So, of course, when people say, "Wow, we're just playing make believe," my character should be able to jump on top of the building. No, well, there is some sort of reality. So that I think an honest, honest discussion of how role playing games work would be a good idea, and it doesn't have to be long. It'd be just we're trying to mimic a real world. Or if it's a supers game, we still have the real world kinds of things to deal with. Even though some of you can fly, most people can't.
And depending on the world, you may or may not want them to see you fly.
That's true. Another thing is they might already have an idea of what a role-playing game is, and they might totally associate with only D&D. So when these people come to this GM and say, we want to play an RPG, they're in their head are saying, we want to play D&D.
But if they don't,
so
you would think they would say, I want to play D&D.
So the GM should ask, well, what kind of game do you want to play? What is your favorite genre? Do you like fantasy? Do you like science fiction? Do you like mystery or horror, right?
Not a mystery game with 2 hours, please.
Well, Tales from the Loop is a mystery game, and it's 2 hours.
Whatever. I
could do it in 2 hours. So I think there has to be some dialogue, a little bit between the preferably before they come to your table, as it will help you decide what game to run and other things, and what adventure to run and things like that. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah,
because if you pull out, okay, we're going to play, and I don't know the name of the game.
We'll play Blade Runner.
All the and
they're like,
unless if they're like me, they're going, why?
We're going to play 2001: Space Odyssey.
Oh God, please don't. What I was going to say is in line with that. Like if you're going to play a game where you're playing like anamorphic animals, you're going to want to make sure that that's not weird for them or something.
Oh yeah, because even when I ran it, there was one of my friends was like, well, do we have hands? Are we like actual animals? I go, you're anamorphic, you're humanoid animals, but you're still like the size of the animal. And he goes, I can't wrap my head around it.
I know.
And then finally, after maybe 1 or 2 hours of playing,
I think I was playing a badger and Mike was playing a mouse, or was it a mouse or a?
He was playing.
It was a small one that I picked him up and I picked him up and I ran with him, right? Because he was small.
Yes, because he was tiny.
And I think that's when it dawned on.
And somebody was playing a salamander.
Yeah.
Anyway, so exactly. So there's preconceptions by players, and GMs have to know that they're going to have them, even if they've never played a game. And I think you should tell them, oh, no, this is what I plan on playing. Would you guys all be interested? And I think if they have a collective genre that they like, if you know that they're all go to Star Trek conventions, then maybe you should run a Star Trek game. Now, there's different rules of Star Trek games, of course. There's at least 3 old ones, Falsa.
Well, this is when you pull a Saul and you go, well, you like the genre. I have a system for that. It may not be the system in the book for it, but I have a system that's easy.
And there's quite a few systems that have had the Star Trek name on it. The most recently is Star Trek Adventures, but that's kind of a crunchy system. and it might be harder for some non-gamers to understand. So I would go with,
but it still has attributes and stuff. So,
but I would go with Lasers and Feelings because they have a Star Trek port
page
or whatever. Yes, they have one that's basically Star Trek, and it has a.
I laugh because Lasers and Feelings is like a 1-page game.
Yes.
Right? So if there's a Star Trek portion, it might be another page.
Yes, and in fact, that Star Trek one has 2 pages.
Oh, 2 pages.
Because you have to have a ship and character, and on
just don't get into space combat.
On
people.
the second page, there's also a quick tables to make the adventure. So you just make 5 rolls, boom, you have the adventure, and you can play. So I mean, I would probably, if I was to run Star Trek for people who have never played an RPG, I would probably use that system.
I think as a GM, if you're asked to do this, it depends on the kind of GM you are, right? There's some GMs that go, okay, no problem. Well, this is what I have. I've run this adventure before. I know exactly what we're going to do. Here we go. Or some GMs would like freak out going, oh no, I'm going to need 3 weeks to prepare for this because that's a lot of work, right? It depended on the kind of GM they are. And then there's also the factor that, like, if you've run adventures for kids,
oh yeah,
even for kids, I say for kids because you never know what they're going to do, and you want it to be simple. And they might decide, they want to go off and smell all the roses, so just make that part of the game, right?
Yes.
So you have to have that kind of attitude that this is what the players want, so you're trying to give it to them to make them have a good experience.
Yes, I remember we played. One of my friends ran a game. Oh, it was probably, my son was about 9 or 10, but he was already an experienced RPGer because he had been playing, Pathfinder at the time we were playing. He was 11, so he was still small. And my friend wanted his daughters to play. And my friend wanted his kids to play in it. But they were really uninterested in the adventure once they figured out that they could ride horses. And they were trick riding horses up and down the middle of the town.
Which really bugged Augustine.
He goes, can we get to the adventure? And then after quite a few rolls of the girls running or riding their horses, the game started. But he was very...
this is not the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, he was kind of upset in a way. So you don't want that to happen. You don't want this mismatch of people's expectations and then reality of this really crunchy game that's going to smack them in the face.
Yeah, you're not going to pull out Shadowrun
right.
for this adventure.
The other thing that was a problem is time. This person was talking about a 2-hour window. If you're talking about a 2-hour window, okay, for most games, I would say for most games...
That's only half the game for a one-shot game, right?
For most games, I would say no way you could do character creation.
That's what I said.
Yes, no way. I don't know what the percentage of games out there. It'd probably be in the high 80s.
So just for all of you GMs out there, you should probably have a little folder together for must-play 2-hour game at any time, right?
Well,
so in fact, can pass stuff out.
In fact, I don't necessarily have something like that, but I have... Like when I run a game at a con, I write everything down and I put it in the folder, and I have that. And I've kept. Well,
you have a bunch of them.
I wouldn't say I've had them for 20 years, but within the last 10, 15 years, I definitely have the notes and the things of all the adventures together in folders in my bookcase. Now, it's not really categorized or separated or cataloged, so I would have to spend a good 10, 15 minutes looking for whatever game I was looking for.
And some of them may have been cannibalized for other games that he's run.
Yes. In fact, I just came across the Carnival Row game adventure I had written when I lost the notes. I thought I had put them in a book, but I found them when my friend came and moved all the stuff.
Anyway,
I found it and I still have them. So I would be able to run that on a whim's notice.
Although I don't think the 2 hours would work for that particular adventure.
I would have to take out like half the adventure at least.
And you have to literally hand the people the clues, dude.
Yes. The period of time is problematic. 2 hours. I mean, you're looking at 10, 15 minutes of if you're going to make characters. And then
I think for games like that, for short games, I would think about it like a kid's game, right? Because kids, you're only going to keep their attention for so long.
Correct.
And there was that cool game. I think we talked about it before. Some guy wanted to do a game with his, like a chef game, right? Where they went and got the ingredients and different kinds of things like that. Something that's simple, but they run into problems doing it.
Of course.
But it can't be anything too complicated, right?
Right. Yeah, I remember that was a fun game. Yeah, getting the ingredients for this big recipe that they had. Also, rules, the lighter the better in this situation. You cannot spend 15 minutes on character creation. Okay,
you can't spend 15 minutes on, like, if you're going to play D&D, skills and attributes. I mean, that's going to take you a good hour to explain to some people. So you're not going to want to do that, right?
I'm not sure it would take you an hour, but it would take a while, depending on how quick people are able to get it.
So I would do that, like Tales from the Loop would be good, where you just go, okay, these are your characteristics. You put them here, and then as we go, I'll tell you, pick that one, or you pick whichever one you think is going to work, and you roll the dice for that one, right?
Right. Like I said, the lighter the better. The less you have to tell the players this is how the game works, the better, because like I said, the 2 hours is not your friend in this case. And then another thing is the adventure has to be really straightforward. There can't be too much subterfuge, misdirection, red herrings, things like that. It ain't going to help your cause. And if you're on a real good time crunch, it's just going to annoy the players because they're like, oh, we went to a dead end. That's not fun. So the game has to progress. I don't know how many times you can progress, and then have the fulfillment of the end. But it should be quick. It should be straightforward. Now, I'm not saying dumb. It doesn't have to be dumb or silly, but it has to be something that isn't up into too much into interpretation.
No, I totally agree. That's what I said. It has to be a straightforward adventure. Like, say somebody stole the lamp,
yes.
The lamp from the middle of the green in the middle of the town or something, and you give them like 5 choices of, then they can go investigate, right?
Yes.
And one of those choices, they need to find it when you get close to your 2 hours.
Right, and I think that would definitely help your game be shorter and be better taken by the players because they're not fumbling around things and they're not feeling that they're lost or they're not getting it. That's the worst feeling as a player, and especially if they've never played before. I think having that feeling is just going to wreck the whole party.
I totally agree, and that is why I always say that if you have, as a GM in your head, if you're saying for the players to get to this, to figure this out, they have to go here. Say your players don't want to go there. So you just have to, as a GM, be flexible enough to move it, right?
To wherever they go.
To wherever they go.
That's where they're going to find the right path forward.
Because as a GM, and especially with a time crunch like this, you're going to want to make sure that you're not the players going, well, I thought that this was where we were supposed to go, right? And then they're like going to be frustrated because there was nothing there.
Yeah, the less that they have to figure out that would, let's say, they have to talk to somebody. You got to tell them who they need to talk to. If you're just saying, well, somebody in the town here has your mission and they're redheads. And then all of a sudden, everybody in the town is a redhead. So is it the bartender? Is it the blacksmith? Is it the innkeeper? Who knows?
That wouldn't be,
That would be terrible. And you're wasting time going and talking to NPCs. And especially if you're like, give everybody a character or a
voice.
A voice. Then they're like, well, this has to be the person we're talking to because there's a whole background on this person. No, it's just another character that I've spent years and years making. Everybody in the town.
So as the GM, it's your responsibility to move the adventure along. You don't have to railroad them.
No.
If they all want to go to the barber shop, then fine. They go to the barber shop. The barber's the one that has the clue for them, right? Or whatever the thing is, right? If it was goblins that stole something, then you could find the goblins and get it back.
Or at the very least, find a trail of goblin prints.
Right.
You're not going to say, oh, there's goblin prints, and they go, oh, but these were kobold prints. These aren't the goblins. And you're like, oh, what the hell? People could get angry. I think, like I said, all these things matter, and I think would be a great benefit for you to think about them and to make sure that a game, when you're running a game in this situation, flows as best as it can. There's all kinds of, like I said, there's all kinds of games on a thread that people mention, and some of them I had my head scratching because some of them I had never heard of, but some of them were like, I'm not sure I would use that particular set of rules, because even just the world itself was kind of, well, I guess you could describe it pretty quickly, but I'm not sure everybody would enjoy playing scoundrels or playing outlaws.
Right.
Right. And they may have thought, well, I thought we're going to play heroes.
So that's an important, Saul already said this, but you should find out what they want to play, because
how they want to play.
I wouldn't want to play a crook or a
Den of Thieves.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play that.
Yeah.
But some people might. I don't know.
Some people might enjoy that. And if they've watched a lot of Breaking Bad or something, I don't know, Sons of Anarchy, then they might be into that kind of stuff. But if you don't know, I wouldn't go in that direction.
And if they're into the Sons of Anarchy and you bring out little animals, it's probably not going to go well.
That might be true too.
I'm just saying.
So I think the best thing to do is to keep all these things in mind, and then hopefully there's something in your repertoire of games that you are familiar enough that you will be able to make it easier for you to run a game like that. I probably wouldn't say, oh, you know what, you got to give me at least 3 to 4 hours, but if they're adamant about it and really want to play, then I would force myself to run a game that I could in that short period of time. And sometimes, games can be really quick, and they don't have to be this big, expansive story. It could be just a simple monster of the week, whodunit, or something simple, and it'll take 2 hours to play, or an hour and a half if you take like a half an hour to give an example of the characters and then talk about the rules, and boom, you have a half an hour and a half of pure playing.
Well, and that could be, if you make it exciting enough for them, then they're going to want to come back and play again.
Correct.
Then you're stuck with running games that are probably going to be longer, so then you can go back to your normal self.
True.
Anything else you want to add?
I think we covered it.
So there you go. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene.
And you have a good day.